Hello, and welcome to the Next Brave Step podcast, the podcast that's all about turning dreams into action. I'm your host, Chelsy Wise. Now, this podcast is more than just something to listen to while you fold laundry. Instead, imagine I'm inviting you to join me in my kitchen, a space for genuine and transformative conversations. Here, with the sunlight streaming through the windows, margaritas and homemade guac on the table, we're ready to dive into stories and strategies that don't just inspire you to think about a better life, but give you the tools, motivations to go out there and make it happen. So pull up a chair, let's talk like old friends, and together we'll navigate the journey from turning dreaming into doing, one brave step at a time. Your adventure towards making your dreams a reality starts right here. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chelsy Wise. Actually, my name is Chelsy Shaffett. I just got married and I'm super excited about it. I do think for now that the business will continue to be Chelsy Wise since there's a lot of SEO around it and all of the things, but we will see how it goes. When I got divorced, I rebranded the podcast to The Next Brave Step, knowing that eventually my last name would change. So I think podcasts will definitely stay the same, but the website will still be under chelseawise.com. Now that we have that new exciting news out of the way, and I'm pretty sure that I will have Joel on this show pretty soon, just to have a little catch up and chit chat and introduce you guys to him. But today I want to talk about something that I think this episode is probably going to be one that I think you should probably bookmark and save for later. To listen to over and over, not because you're not ready for it now, but because it is a kind of off the cuff episode, mostly after a couple of coaching calls that I have had this week. And it just seems to be this theme. We're in like the second week of January right now. It was another theme that, popped up for myself even earlier this week. And I think that this pep talk is something that I would really benefit from like over and over again. And I think that you might too. So what started all of this is I've had a couple coaching calls lately. These ladies were just like super pumped for the new year. And now like we're getting into like the grind of January and like actually putting in the work and doing the things instead of just like the vision planning and thinking about a great future, which is important and very like needs to happen. But now we are to the point now where you have to like boots hit the ground, do the work to make the goal happen. And I was even doing some research. There is a stat that like the second Friday in January is like quit day. When I was kind of sitting down to think about what all I wanted to talk about for this episode, I was thinking about some analogies and some things that are going on in my life right now. So right now, like I said, it's the middle of January. I live in upper North Dakota in the middle of nowhere where it is very cold. Last night, I think we had actual temperatures of like negative 20 degrees out, not counting the wind chill. Today, I think we are sitting at like 9 degrees above zero and there's not a lot of wind. So we might actually be like above zero right now, but it is cold outside. And because it is so cold outside, I am just thinking and wishing and dreaming about summer again. If you have followed me for any amount of time on any social media, you know that I love plants. I love gardening. I've done huge cut flower gardens in the past and I am like excited about it. But I have learned my lesson that you do not start seeds in January because otherwise you get these tall, lanky plants that just don't do well because it's too soon to start them. For most things like zinnias and cosmos and tomato plants and pepper plants. You do not start those in January in North Dakota. You wait until like March, April at the like soonest, right? So like our last average frost date is like down where I'm at, down in the valley. Historically, for the last like 3 years now, has been like May 20th, which sucks. Like we have frost all the way up until then, which means you don't put plants out until then, right? And even then, you're keeping your eye on the weather. And you usually look at your last average frost date in order to count back 3, 6, 8, 10 weeks before when you're supposed to start seeds inside. And for most things, it is not in January. However, I am starting a couple seeds here in the middle of January for 2 plants in particular. And the first plant is eucalyptus, and the second one is lisianthus. You can go look up what they look like. Basically, lisianthus looks like these like beautiful little roses. And eucalyptus, I'm sure you've seen it. It's the greenery that is in a lot of wedding bouquets and arrangements, and it smells delicious, and there's lots of different varieties, right? Now, the thing about both Lysianthus and eucalyptus, especially like eucalyptus, is there is what's called a germination period. Now, if you've listened to a lot of personal development stuff, you've probably heard the analogy of the germination period, and that's not anything new. But essentially what a germination period is, it is the time between when you put the seed in the ground and the time that you actually see something break through the ground. So a little tiny seedling popping up. So that time in that period in between the seed going in the ground and a plant coming out of the ground is called a germination day. Now there's things called germination rates, which is like how many percentage of the seeds that you plant will actually germinate. Different thing, but a germination period is, or days to germination is what you'll see on the back of seed packets, is how many days it takes. Now, for things like tomatoes and zinnias and cosmos and peppers and marigolds, those are very, very quick. Like we have had, under like perfect conditions in the greenhouse, we've had marigolds and tomatoes germinate between like 8 and 12 hours. Like all of a sudden things are popping up in green and you see stuff, which is like amazing and awesome. You have to have pretty perfect conditions for that. Generally, it's going to be anywhere from like, 2 to 5 days for most seeds, right? For Lysianthus and for eucalyptus especially, and lavender, it is anywhere between 21 and 35 days before that seed even starts to think about like breaking open and doing anything, right? That is a long time for something to just sit there and not do anything. And I think the first year that I grew lavender, I completely forgot about it and got dried out and nothing ever sprouted because it took so long for this to germinate, to actually start to show any type of growth, any type of development, any possibility, right? Now, you're going to hear a lot about you got to tend to your seed even when it's under the soil and you're not seeing anything. And I believe in that too. You do have to. But before you even get to that point, you have to believe that that seed is going to produce something, right? And when we bring this back to personal development, into goals, into business, you have to believe on some level, deep down in your heart and your soul, that you were made for more, or that you are supposed to achieve this goal, or that you are capable of achieving this goal, right? You have to believe somewhere deep down that that's possible in order to take that first step, putting the seed in the soil, right? So often there's two sides of this, the beginning before you actually take that step, like in gardening, usually like year 2 and 3, you're doing a lot more planning and researching and like figuring out how to grow all of the things. You got that first initial hit of growing plants that first year, and some things worked and some things didn't, and you kind of just like stumbled into it and you figured it out, which is beautiful and wonderful and something that like everybody goes through no matter what it is, whether it's business, whether it's goal setting, whether it's growing plants. Like you're going to have that beginning phase, that very first one where you kind of like, not stupidly, but like unprepared fall into it and things work out. And that's awesome. That's amazing. If you can keep that momentum up, perfect. But so often in life, something is going to derail you or stop your growing season and you have to start over, right? So in gardening, we have winter. Like everything dies and freezes up here in the north. Like, yes, there's things that will come back the next year sometimes, like perennials, but you're going to have a season of stop. There's a season of rest. And very often in business and life, there is that season of rest. And then you start the process all over again. You go on to the next chapter. You open the next book, right? You set the next goal. You relaunch your business, or you adapt. You do something different. You move into a new house. There's always the season of starting over. It is a pattern in life, in nature. And I think often we take that little period for granted a little bit, and we know things are possible, but some things didn't work out beforehand. And maybe that's why you're in the season of rest, why you're in the season of downtime or turning over, reinventing yourself, right? And we can so often get stuck in this phase, in this mode of just planning for the future, or thinking about a better future and not actually taking that faith step, that first step of putting the seed in the ground to do the work. And we just sit there and just start planning. And we trick ourselves into being busy about planning and not actually doing anything that is going to move the needle forward. I'm guilty of this. I have done this so many times before, and it is so frustrating when you get into that stage where you just, this cycle where you just plan and think and want something bigger and better, and you don't actually hit the pavement and do the thing. You don't have the faith enough in the goal because you're scared or you're nervous or, what if it doesn't work out? And you kind of get stuck in your own head. Today, I want to give you the pep talk. I want to give you the message that do the thing. Nike has the amazing catchphrase or tagline of just do it, which is so simple and so perfect. It is something that we just kind of gloss over, right? You have to have the faith in the first step and taking the first step, right? That's kind of what this whole podcast is about, is taking the next brave step. And sometimes it is the very first step. Sometimes it is just the next step, right? And the beauty in taking the next step, just moving forward in whatever the process is you're kind of guaranteed to never fail as long as you're moving forward. No matter what, as long as you are growing and long as you're learning from whatever the experience is, you take what serves you into the next chapter, into the next season, and leave everything else behind, right? That is why I feel like I can never fail. I can look at any situation, take what served me, and leave the rest behind, right? So a great analogy of this or story of this or representation of this is when I was working in economics development. Now, I learned so much in that job. It was one of my only office jobs where it was clock in, sit at a desk, sit there for 8 hours a day and leave. And I had to learn a lot of things about that, right? I'm really great at answering phones now and have the whole customer service voice if you want to hear it. But I also learned a lot about watching how people led other people underneath them. And I used that time, and I knew that that time was never going to be a forever thing for me. I knew that it was going to be short. And so I needed to learn as much as I could about all of the different things that were going on around me, whether that was, city zoning things that because I knew that I wanted to get back into the coaching and broaden it out outside of photographers. So being able to understand the economics behind things and where people can go to get funding for different businesses or different grants and programs like that, how to find all of those things, but then also inside of the city itself, inside the organization, understanding how government works, but also understanding how an office works and how a boss works and seeing okay, this worked really well. I would have done that differently. And learning how to lead a team and watching other people. Those are all things that I learned and actively knew that I was learning at the time when I was in that position. And then when I left the city, because I felt like I was slamming my head against a wall, clocking in and sitting there for 8 hours, twiddling my thumbs, and not having the freedom or the reign in order to actually do the changes and do all the stuff, which came down to working in government a little bit. I felt comfortable leaving and not feeling like a failure. I mean, there was definitely periods of it where I was like, oh man, I just left this nice government job with great benefits and, very consistent, all of the things, in order to go out on my own and create something that didn't exist. And I had the fear and the scariness of it, but I had the faith that I was able to do it. And yes, I have, tripped along the way, but I keep getting back up and taking the next step forward. And as long as you can adopt, I want to encourage you to adopt the idea that you can never fail as long as you learn from whatever it is that you just quote unquote failed at, right? And I want you to just have the faith to do the thing. So if you have been waiting for someone to give you the sign to go research your business or to actually like file for your LLC, whatever that sign is that you've been waiting from the universe, I believe that you were meant to hear that today. And I so much want to just come alongside you, grab your hand, and let's just start running down the road together. Like, you have this. I believe in you. You can do it. And 2025, I think, will be the year where so many women take that next brave step forward in their life, whether it is starting a business, whether it is leaving a relationship that is not right for them, whether it is starting over brand new. I have had a lot of messages from people recently who, especially after we announced that we got married, because we eloped, so it wasn't like this big like thing. People knew we were engaged, but we weren't talking a whole bunch about wedding planning and there wasn't invites sent out. So people were a little bit caught off guard. And there's a lot of people on like my Facebook who maybe didn't know that I had been engaged, and all of a sudden I had a new name and they're like, oh my gosh, she's like a completely new person than I have seen or talked to her in 4 years. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've gotten a lot of people that have reached out and been like, you are such a different person than you were beforehand, and not in like a bad way, in just this way that you look so happy and I'm so excited for you and all the things. And while I'm honored to have all of people reach out and say all the things and see the growth, and there's been a lot of work that I've had to do underground, like on myself, I had to have the faith that there was a better future for myself and for my family and for my kids in order to make some of the really, really tough decisions that I have made that maybe didn't make sense to people in my life in the last 5 years. But now I can look at it and be like, I had faith 5 years ago that this was going to all work out for me. I knew that I was going to figure it all out because I can't fail as long as I keep moving forward, right? So embody that. If you have been waiting for someone to tell you to take the next step, this is it. Keep moving forward. Take the step. Hire the coach. Join the group. Purchase the course. Make the sales call. Send the email. Post the reel. Record the story. You've got this. I am so proud of you, and I am sitting here cheering you along the way. I cannot wait to hear about how 2025 has been your year. I want to cheer you on. So come find me on Instagram. Still, it's going to be under Chelsy Wise, I think, for now. You can always find us on the podcast, Next Brave Step Podcast. We will have all the links down in the show notes below, and we will update them if they ever change. But as of right now, that is where it's going to be. I think 2025 is our year, and I cannot wait to see how it all plays out in December of this year, because it's going to be amazing. And I am so stinking excited and on fire and ready. Like, I hope you can feel the vibration in your earbuds right now or in your speaker, because I am just buzzing with excitement for 2025. And I am so proud of you for tuning into this podcast and listening to this little pep talk. And I want to encourage you, save it, bookmark it, put it in your notes app so that you can come back to it and listen to it when you need that pick me up, because I know I'm going to. And I think you should too. Maybe even share this with someone who you think could hear this message today. All right, guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's plant of the day, staghorn fern that really needs to be repotted. So if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can see my cute little plant. I think this might be my thing. I think I'm just going to change out this plant every once in a while. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful January, and I hope that 2025 is the year that you stick to it, and this is your year. It really is. All right, guys, I will see you in the next episode. Bye. That wraps up today's episode of The Next Brave Step. I've truly enjoyed having you join me on this journey. Here at The Next Brave Step, we don't just talk about our dreams, we take bold actions towards them every day. Stay connected by hitting that subscribe button, and dive even deeper with us by becoming part of the Next Brave Step Insiders group on Facebook. Let the insights and energy from today's conversation ignite your next brave step forward. Remember, every small step is a vital part of your incredible journey. So get out there and take that next step forward. You're never alone. I'll be right here cheering you on. I'll see you in the next episode.